Hello and welcome back, everyone. Again, this is Sarah moderating with Marguerite Rupno and our host. This is an invitation to self-care PWS journey. Our host is Emily Felt. Emily is a mother of two, writer, storyteller, and world traveler, and also a PWS parent mentor. She is certified in certified coach. She's a certified coach and practitioner of positive psychology, which basically just means the science of well-being. So Emily, our host today, is invited you all. Please have a pen and paper handy. It will help you throughout the session, and also make sure that your volumes are turned up because of the video that she will be sharing with us later, also during the session. Again, without further ado, Emily, you can start. Also, just to remind you all that there's a Q&A session that we invite you to, it will be turned on your right-hand side. You're invited to type in your questions as we go, and also the survey right underneath that. You can also help us by filling out the survey at the end of the session. Enjoy your sessions, and Emily, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you very much for introducing me. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Okay, great. I hope that the fireworks in the background don't bother anyone. I'm calling in from the coast of Spain today for my family vacation. Anyway, it's really an honor to be here and to have the opportunity to present to you an invitation to self-care and the PWS journey. I think for me, self-care is one of the most important topics that I could share with you, and that probably we need to have in our skill set, in our toolbox, for those of us who are parents of children with special needs or caregivers to persons with Prader-Willi syndrome. So I am assuming that if you're at this session, you're probably one of the two. If you're someone else, welcome as well. So before I get going, I just wanted to say thank you to Sarah and Marguerite, my moderators. Also just remind everyone, we'll hold off questions to the end. I would really like this session to be a little bit like a retreat. This is a place where we can kind of set aside all of our information and inquiries and worries that we may have, and just indulge in a little bit of feeling good and taking care of ourselves. So with that, welcome everyone. Just to give you a little bit of information about me, I'm a mindfulness facilitator, a coach, a writer. I work in communications, and I volunteer as a parent mentor here at PWSA. I've included my contact information here for you in case you want to jot it down. If you have any questions after this session, please don't hesitate to get in touch and connect with me. And I have
Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Marguerite. You have something over the screen so people cannot see the PowerPoint.
No one can see the PowerPoint?
You have something screen over the PowerPoint?
I don't have any screen over the PowerPoint. I can see it. Let me unshare. Oh, hold on one moment, please. Please everyone let me know if you can see this.
Yes, now there's something up at the top, but yeah, oh, yep, there we go.
Can you still see it now?
I think it's all good now.
Yeah. Okay, great. Please feel free to interrupt me if there's something you can't see.
I think it was the chat. Maybe
it's the chat box.
Yeah, can you just close the chat?
All right, chat's gonna go off. Okay, great. So welcome everyone. This is my family here in the photo. I have a 9-year-old daughter with PWS. Her name is Olivia. This is actually a few years old, this photo. And I also have a son who's 13. So as we get started with this session, I just want to invite everyone to join me in a brief session intention. So just take a moment to kind of get comfortable wherever you're seated and kind of take a deep breath in and exhale, let it back out. You can close your eyes if that feels good for you, or you can leave them open. So this, the intention that I'd love to set for this session for all of you and for myself is to leave whatever is on my mind aside and dedicate the next 40 minutes to self-care. So this is really important because these conferences, we're generally exposed to a lot of information and it can be swirling around in our heads. And so for the next 40 minutes, I'm just inviting you to set everything aside, let go of any worries you might have, and know that whatever you need to remember, you will remember. Whatever information you need, it'll come back to you. And we can take the next little bit of time and just indulge in this journey together. So what I'm going to talk today about is a little bit about caregiver fatigue and caregiver burnout and what it is. We're going to also go over what self-care is and why, and what my approach is to self-care. I'm going to share with you a holistic definition of self-care and why I think that we should approach this topic from a place of our whole selves, not just our physical selves. I'm going to introduce to you Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which you may have seen before or you may not have, and talk a little bit about the physical aspects of self-care, mental aspects, and spiritual self-care as well. And then we'll also share some scientific findings, some curiosities, and some very easy 2-minute self-care practices that you can both try out right now and also, repeat if it's interesting to you. So it probably comes as no surprise that along with humanitarians and healthcare workers, caregivers and parents of kids with special needs or disabilities tend to be at higher risk for burnout. We always talk about that this is stressful, that we're busy, that we've got a lot on our plate and a lot going on, right? And caregiver fatigue is actually a thing. It actually exists. You've probably experienced it, and I know I have for sure. The symptoms involve lack of energy, poor sleep, irritability, weight gain or weight loss, or also, loss of any interest in activities or hobbies that we may have. So the model that I'm going to share with you here this afternoon is the Flourishing Model. It's an area called positive psychology. It's actually a field of science. And in the science of flourishing, we take a positive approach. So we look at our strengths and we try to build on them. And then we also aim to create kind of a sense of balance, a sense of balancing all of the different parts of ourself and the different parts of our lives and our families with also attending to a person with a disability. So the definition that I like to use for self-care comes from actually a book called An Invitation to Self-Care. So I have to give a shout out to that book for the title to this presentation. It's by a licensed marital and family therapist, Tracy Cleantis, and I really recommend it. If you want to pick it up or if you're interested in this topic, you can look into it. Anyway, she says that a meaningful self-care plan is built around daily attention to our emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual health. And I'm going to share a quick video with you, which is 1 minute long. And this is going to explain in a little more depth how this fits into our role as parents and caregivers.
So you're a caregiver or a parent who takes care of children with special needs. How can I best support you right now? Oh no, honey, are you okay? You know I'm always here for you. And not only are you exhausted, all right, sweetie, it's time for school. All right, sweetie, time for therapy. Time for dinner. Time for bed. You are emotionally drained. This is what we get for being human, aka empathetic creatures who often get swallowed up in other people's suffering. And by virtue of doing this, we may develop compassion fatigue over time.
I can't live like this anymore.
Luckily, there's an antidote to compassion fatigue. A little something we call self-care. This looks different for everyone. Savoring a cup of tea, moving your body, journaling, gardening, having a bath, reading a novel. Whatever self-care looks like for you, practice it, especially when you are so used to taking care of children. Because filling your own cup will enable you to have more compassion for the children you tend to, all the while being less bothered by their distress. Self-care is what allows you to show up for them at your best.
So I love that video from Sunshine Cocoon. If you haven't heard of Sunshine Cocoon, it's actually the work of Sarah McAllister, and she does brief motivational videos to kind of help keep your energy up during the day. Is everyone hearing this okay?
You could, we can hear you fine. If you could just try to close out of the chat, because we can also see the chat. And then if you could just push the screen box to up top, because it's kind of in the way of the presentation itself. So you just push it up. I don't know if you can do that.
How's that?
Just the box where it shows you are sharing the screen. Because basically we see everything you have on your screen. So if you can just maybe clear everything out and just leave. Yes, there you go.
Is that better?
That's better, much better. Thanks so much.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Thank you for interrupting me and letting me know.
No problem. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Okay, so self-care. This is something that is really about meeting our needs, right? And I like to think of it in terms of the work of Abraham Maslow, who was an American psychologist working back in the 1950s, who was coined with developing the idea that we have different levels of needs. So obviously we have, body needs, physical needs, things that like food, need for food, need for water, warmth and rest, so-called physiological needs. We also have needs for safety, for security, and a roof over our head. And the work of Abraham Maslow really was pioneering in the sense that he also introduced other types of needs that we have. He said that as human beings, we also need to belong, and we need to be loved. We need to have friendships and relationships. We need to be good at things. We need to feel good about ourselves and have self-esteem. And finally, he also said that we also need a sense of self-actualization. So all humans in some way, shape, or form desire to reach their full potential and engage in the world in a creative way, right? So this also involves belonging to something bigger. So the model that I often work with when I think about self-care is one of self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-advocacy. So the idea being that when we know ourselves better through self-awareness, we actually better understand what our needs are, right? We have compassion for ourselves because we've got a lot on our plate. And that then enables us to actually ask other people to help us facilitate, meeting our needs. And then we're able to better care for ourselves. So this is what I'm going to be going into a little bit more here. So what does the physical body actually need? Well, in reality, what we really need is like plenty of sleep, food, water, obviously. We need to move the body. I find it interesting that in the evolution of our species, it's only recently that we've actually had to motivate ourselves to get movement. Like for most of our evolution, movement was just built into our daily routine. And that's part of the reason why our brain evolved to learn through movement. We also need breath. Breath is obviously we need, to breathe in oxygen to fuel ourselves and to fuel our brain, but breath can also be a mechanism that can calm our nervous system. And there's also recent scientific findings showing that we really need some sort of connection with nature. We can call it vitamin N. I also find it interesting that intention really matters. So most of us are probably already getting some of our physical needs met, or most of our physical needs met, but often we just aren't thinking about how that's coming about, right? Like we might be getting exercise in the course of our daily life, in the course of our work, and we just feel like we're not exercising enough. So we kind of go around with this sort of, guilty feeling like we're not doing enough. This has actually been studied. The research by Crum and her associates, she's a researcher at Stanford, did a study on hotel maids, and they found that when these women were interviewed at different points in time, that their health indicators improved once they had been made aware of the fact that their actual job actually included a great deal of physical activity. So I think the key takeaway from this sort of science is that it's not only important what we do in terms of taking care of ourselves, but it's also important that we do it with some intention behind it, that we actually put some thought behind what we're doing. So I want to do a very, very brief, quick physical self-care intervention with you. It's called simple desk stretches. So if you just want to have a seat, and if you're not sitting down, you might want to. This is something you could do at your desk or anytime you're just, been spending a lot of time kind of in one spot seated. So take a deep breath in and then breathe back out again. And then slowly turn your whole head to the right. And you can just feel the stretch as your head turns to the right over your right shoulder. You can take another breath there. And then do the same and turn over to your left. Move your head to the left, look over your left shoulder. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Whatever feels good to you. Now you can put your arms down at your sides, and then as you breathe in, you can slowly bring them up over your head. I'm not sure if you can see me doing it because I have a background here on the Zoom. You can bring them up and you can look up at your hands. You can feel the stretch through the sides of your body. And then as you exhale, you can just bring your arms back down to your sides. And you'll notice when you do this that you probably feel a little bit more relaxed afterwards, and you may have a little bit more energy as well. So it's a good thing to do like every 30, 40 minutes or so when you're seated. So I wanted to also provide you some ideas of physical self-care. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because at another conference that I spoke at a couple of years ago, people really wanted concrete ideas for ways to put some of these things into practice. So the idea with physical self-care is that some is better than none and more is better than some. So if you feel like you're not doing anything, you can just start by doing any intentional movement of any kind. Even a 5-minute walk around one city block, or one loop around your backyard actually is so much better than doing nothing. The key there is that it just be intentional. You can also do a very simple breath meditation, which means at different points throughout the day, if you're feeling a little stressed, you just take 10 seconds and focus on your breathing. Just be aware as you breathe in and then breathe back out. And you'll notice when you do this how it kind of does a quick reset for you in terms of your mood. You can also do desk stretches, which we just did as a practice. You can put a plant in your workspace. That's a way of connecting with nature, as tiny as it may seem. You can put lemon or cucumber in your water so that it becomes a little more enjoyable to drink it. That can help you stay hydrated. And you can also do self-massage, 5-minute yoga practices. There are really great yoga videos free online from Yoga with Adriene. They range from like 5 to 20 minutes. And then you can also even schedule reminders on your phone. So if you are in a position where you're going through your day kind of on autopilot, you can put a reminder in your phone to remind you every hour to do some sort of physical self-care. So moving on to the emotional self. Our emotional selves have very different needs than our physical selves. So our mind, I'm sort of blending the two here, the mind and the emotions, right? But our mind really needs downtime and mindfulness, and it actually needs mental rest. So we tend to live in a time where we're kind of going, and we have a lot of stimulus coming in. Actually, I think I read something not too long ago that we're kind of exposed in the course of one day to the same amount of information that a person would have been exposed to in a whole year, like back at the beginning of the 20th century. So that's really a lot more for our brains and our minds to process. And we can be mindful of that in terms of figuring out how to support ourselves emotionally through self-care. So single tasking, turns out, is very, very good for our brain. Our brain is not really wired to be doing multiple things all at once, or if it is, it should be more of an exceptional sort of situation as opposed to the norm. So this sort of goes directly at odds with our very busy lifestyle that most of us live right now, where we're kind of constantly doing 10 or 20 things at a time. Our brain and our minds also really need positive emotions. I really like the work of Barbara Fredrickson. She's a researcher in positive psychology who studies positive emotions and the way that they serve us, like what do they actually give us and do for us evolutionarily. And her work suggests that positive emotions help us develop coping skills and coping mechanisms. So not only does the experience of feeling a positive emotion kind of open up the prefrontal cortex of our brain and get sort of a neurohormonal response going in our body that feels really, really good, positive emotions help us build resources to be more resilient in the future. So this might seem contrary to what most of us might think. We usually think, well, you know, once I fix my problems, then I'll focus on being positive. Actually, integrating positive emotions into our lives helps us manage the difficulties that we're already experiencing. And again, positive ideas, words actually affect our health. I find it really interesting that the World Wellbeing Project has been able to predict rates of chronic disease just by analyzing people's social media and Twitter feeds, right? So not only do health indicators point towards our health, also just our language points towards it. And then also our emotional selves really need human connection. There's a lot of research on this area. And as it turns out, we've really evolved to live in groups, to interact with each other, to cooperate. And so some of the research shows that even those really weak ties that we have with other people, like going to the grocery store and having a very brief conversation with someone in the checkout line, even those things can really, really support our own mental health. So these are a few of our mental and emotional needs. So I'm going to do another very brief self-care intervention. This is sort of guided. Basically, I'd like to focus a little bit on our mental and emotional needs. So we're going to do a very quick gratitude storm just for 2 minutes. So grab your pencil and your paper that you came to this session with. And for the next 2 minutes, I want you to write down as fast as you can everything that comes into your mind that you're grateful for. So this doesn't have to be something big, you know, like something really great happened. It's just those little daily things that feel really good that we never even take time to think about. Like, you know, I could write down my morning coffee. I could write down, I got a hug from my child today. I could write down, it's sunny outside and the weather was predicted to be rain. So for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to set my timer. We're just going to write down everything good, everything that we're grateful for, and we're going to see how that feels.
Emily, halfway point.
Thank you so much. So we'll just keep going with this for another minute or so. And like I said, don't read into it too much. Just whatever comes to mind that's good, that you feel grateful for, just write it down. At some point, we all run out of words pretty quickly, but keep going with it. Keep pulling more information, more words, more things that you're grateful for, little things. So we can probably wrap up a little bit. The 2 minutes are almost up. So if you have any last few items that you want to get down into your list, now's the time to write it down. And also just take a minute to reflect and pause for a moment on how you may feel. When I've done this activity with people in the past, it's often felt really good. And sometimes people are really surprised by just how their mood can shift just very quickly, just, you know, in the course of 2 or 3 minutes. when we take a moment to really reflect on all the good things that are going on in our life, we find that there are many more than we had realized. So I also wanted to provide you a little bit of, ideas in this area of mental and emotional self-care. Mindfulness can be really, really helpful. It's not necessarily a religious thing. It's just an act of taking a pause in your day and taking some time to slow down. And there are a number of mindfulness and meditation apps that you can use to help you with this. There's Simple Habit, on which I actually provide a guided meditation. There's Insight Timer, there's Headspace, and there's others as well. So you can get some support in finding 5 minutes a day to do this. It's very, very helpful. You can also use a productivity timer app to help you focus. You can set it for 15 or 20 minutes when you're doing something and make a commitment to just work on that one task for the next 15 minutes. You can turn off your phone notifications. I find this really helpful because notifications are one of the things that kind of keeps us distracted, keeps us from being able to just center and hone in on one thing. Or you can even turn your phone completely off. I usually turn my phone off at night and put it on airplane mode and don't turn it back on until like 8 or 9 in the morning. Also, in family, it works great to have a whole day that's a digital free day if you can, where people just have time to connect with each other. If you are the kind of person that tends to worry, you can schedule worry time. So that means, if I find myself worrying all day, I might schedule my worry time for, Tuesday evening. And if I worry at another time, I just say, well, it's not Tuesday evening yet. So I just kind of shelve it until then. And then there's other things you can do, like you can keep a gratitude journal, or you can use positive primers, stickies, things that you can place around your home to help you remember to get some of those positive ideas and positive words into your daily life. So now I'm going to turn to our spiritual selves. Our spiritual selves, I say spiritual self, and I don't mean that, you have to be religious or anything to feel this. This refers to the self-actualization part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you remember at the top of the pyramid, there's a part of ourselves, small as it may be, that is actually aware of everything that's happening and, has values and has things that it cares about. There's a part of us that wants to live our full potential. And that's what I refer to as the spiritual self. So often we find that in our lives, when we're taking care of other people, we can easily tend to kind of put our spiritual needs aside because our lives are all consumed by doing care, by meeting other people's needs, and it's easy to overlook these ones. But faith, spirituality, and purpose-based activities have all been linked to health and longevity in scientific studies. And it's interesting because you don't even need to be religious to engage in some of these activities and get the benefit. I remember one study that I read showed that people that were really engaged in their communities and giving back and volunteering and so forth actually tended to live quite a bit longer and also had better health outcomes. So by spirituality, I also mean that it's really the sense of feeling connected to something bigger than ourselves. It's about life purpose. It's about meaning. It's about finding in our lives, what are the meaning that is behind things? Why are things important? What matters to me? Why do I do what I do? And what am I really here for? These are all spiritual questions that don't usually make up like the bulk of our lives, but yet if we really want to take care of ourselves and feel good, then we really need to attend to them. So the problem with life these days is that we often don't have time for the reflection and the contemplation that we need to undergo in order to sort of like develop this part of ourselves. We can't really do this in 10 or 15 seconds per day. We actually need to have a time to kind of rest and rejuvenate and sort of like feel what we need and pay attention to ourselves and listen. But interestingly enough, I did some research on this a couple of years back, and there isn't a lot of research on the opportunities that our particular situation presents to us in terms of developing ourselves spiritually. There is, however, a lot of research on the stresses that we feel, the difficulties we have, the challenges, involved in being a caregiver or managing family life with, a disabled child or a disabled person. Actually, it doesn't even matter what disability the person has. But I did come across a couple of interesting studies, and one of them actually interviewed parents and children with special needs and asked them what is the positive impact that this experience can have on our lives. So some of the findings included what's listed here. Children with disabilities can have a really unique positive effect. And sometimes that effect can even be greater than what it might be if they weren't disabled. Parents in this study reported that they had a stronger belief in the intrinsic value of people. And I'm sure that probably among us, we have many of these types of stories as well. Parents had also a heightened sense of pride. They often felt, like they had become better people. They had sort of, had found strengths in themselves that they didn't realize they had. And they had also been able to come together and develop stronger relationships. And children, for their part, were really aware of how proud their parents were of them. And they also felt that they had made positive contributions to their families. So I love this study. In these slides, I included a link to it at the end if anyone wants to consult it. But I think it's a really great example of when we look at our own situation with a positive approach, that we really begin to find that there are really wonderful, beautiful things about it. And we feel good about it when we focus on them. So it's time for another 2-minute easy self-care intervention. And this one is related to meaning and purpose. So it tries to address that top of the pyramid that regards self-actualization. So for the next 2 minutes, I'm just going to ask you to reflect a little bit, take your pen and paper, and just think about how has being on the PWS journey or related to PWS in general, how has this benefited you? You might want to think about, who are the important people that you've met along the way that really changed your life? I know I've often thought about, how many times has my daughter broken my expectations of her, or risen above them, or done things that really surprised me. What have I learned from the people in my life that I've met on this journey? What have they showed me? Things like that. So just for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to put my timer on and we'll just do a little bit of reflection about how has being on this PWS journey been a benefit in your life. We always talk about how it's a stress, but it's a benefit too. So we'll just give 2 minutes to think about that. And sometimes when we engage in this type of reflection, sometimes hard things can emerge as well. Sometimes when we think about the beauty of the experience, we also, we can get emotional, we can feel it in our body. And if that happens to you during this exercise, I just want to encourage you to take a deep breath, let yourself feel whatever emotions might be arising, and just kind of let them flow through you and let them pass on. That's basically what emotions do. So we'll just take one more minute to think about and kind of contemplate, what are the good things about this journey? How far have we come? How are those people that we know living with Prader-Willi syndrome, how are they contributing to a more tolerant world? How are they uplifting people around them? How are they bringing joy into our lives. Just going to give you about 30 more seconds to finish writing down whatever you might be writing right now. Okay, so as we wrap up this brief self-care intervention, I'm going to move on to some very practical ideas for how we can all integrate a little more spiritual self-care into our day. So obviously one real easy way is through prayer or meditation. If you have a faith or a religion, then I definitely don't need to tell you that prayer can be really helpful. And for those who don't have a faith or practice a religion, meditation can often be something that's really, really helpful as well. And it doesn't necessarily need to be linked with a religion per se, or even a belief in God. It's just simply a contemplation of our own energy and our own awareness. This can be really important. Actually, just an anecdote, I was recently interviewing a dad of a child with PWS for a series in a story that we're writing with PWSA, and he was sharing his story of how his faith had really supplied him a lot of strength and a lot of resilience to handle the different, physical and emotional challenges that had come along with being a father to a child with PWS. So prayer and meditation, that's one real obvious way. Also, you can set daily intentions. I found this really helpful in my own life for self-care. And what I mean by this is you can get up in the morning and you can take 5 minutes and you can just think about, what you'd like for your day. Setting intention is different than setting a goal, because when you set a goal, you then try to achieve it. Whereas an intention is just an open invitation to your own life to bring you whatever you kind of want to bring into your life. So sometimes I set an intention to be good to those people around me, to have patience. I sometimes set an intention to become aware of all of the good things happening in my day. Or maybe I set an intention to, prioritize my own needs for a day. That's okay. Reflective journaling is another practice that's actually quite documented in the positive psychology research that can be really helpful. The reason is that sometimes when we write about experiences in our lives, we are even more honest than if we're, thinking about it or talking about it. Our mind, talk and self-talk tends to be somewhat negative. We have a bit of a negative bias, but I found that grabbing a journal and beginning to write about some of these ideas can be very healing. Another thing that can be really fun to do is write a family purpose statement. So it just means having a family meeting and thinking through as a family, what are the things that are important to us in our family life? What are the elements that we really value? And, what do we think that we are bringing to the world and contributing as a family? Of course, you can do the same thing at an individual level. You don't have to do it as a group. Rituals are also another area that can be really supportive spiritual self-care. And rituals are already integrated into a number of religious and wisdom traditions. But if you don't have rituals, you can institute them into your life. This just could be something like going through a ritual before dinner time, or like saying a round of gratitude or feeling thankful. It can also look like having a conversation with your family and talking about people's good qualities and what strengths do they bring to the group and how do they use them and how did you see them using that. Volunteering can also be a great way to support yourself spiritually. At least this is what the research says. So I know I've done a lot of this in my family with my 2 kids. We've volunteered at the food bank, and we've also given back in other ways. Obviously, we try to give back as well to PWSA just because we are all on this journey together. And, you know, there's many, many ways that we can support each other. Finally, I wanted to mention, it might seem really obvious, but babysitters, you know, probably the thing that most of us need as parents or as caregivers or whatever role we have in this whole process is we just need time to ourselves to have these reflections and have some of this contemplation. So I was actually just speaking with a friend of mine this morning who lives in Germany, and she has a son who's 7 years old and has Mowat-Wilson syndrome, which is, you know, obviously a different disability, but she said that she contracts a babysitter once a week and she just uses that time to do nothing, just whatever comes up. So I think this can be a great way to support our spiritual self-care, because generally when we get a babysitter, it's because we have to actually do something. But what if we just allowed ourselves the opportunity to get a babysitter when we don't need to do anything? We just get to be by ourselves, and we just get to, you know, have that experience of whatever comes up in life, we can do it however we feel is okay. Mental health days is another idea. It's not new. People have been taking mental health days unofficially, I think, for a number of years now. But, you know, any day that we want to try and arrange our day in a way that supports us is good for our self-care. And I say here mental health days, I also want to say that this really honestly could look even just like 15 minutes. You know, if I need to take 15 minutes for myself, having the ability to do that is really important. And last but not least, therapy breaks. With my family, we have taken therapy breaks, sometimes for up to a month or two at a time, where we put all therapy on hold. And it's been really healing for our families. So I know that might not work for everyone or even be something that everyone wants to consider, but I want to put out there that it's okay to adjust and adapt, you know, all the things that we need to do into a system that really suits us and our family and our own needs. That's a really crucial element of self-care. So I now want to just open up for questions. What do you have, you know, what are the questions that you have about self-care? But before I do that, I want to take 1 minute of your time. And I just want to say, let's just take a minute to come back to center, take a deep breath, and just know that, you know, all this information is kind of integrating into our system. And let's set an intention right now that we don't forget to take care of ourselves. We're going to be on this journey for quite a long time. It's an ongoing part of our lives. And we need to remember each and every day that we need balance, and, you know, we're part of something bigger. And to the extent that we can take care of ourselves, we'll take better care of those people that we actually care for. So with that, I guess I should unshare my screen in order to do the Q&A. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, so we only have one question so far. They like the person in the video and we're wondering what was her name again. They'd love to find her on YouTube.
Okay, so I think she's got an Instagram, actually, in an Instagram feed, and it's called Sunshine Cocoon, and her name is Sarah McAllister. So if you'd like to follow her, she's actually a friend of mine. We went through training together at the Flourishing Center, which is a place where I work, and it's actually a center for continuing education in positive psychology. And she does like 1 minute to 2 minute brief motivational videos that aim to sort of share the science with people in ways that they can easily remember and integrate into their lives in an easy way.
Wonderful, thank you. Since there are no other, somebody is saying, thank you. This was a great presentation on self-care. Gives me ideas of improving my own self-care.
Oh, good. Well, that was kind of the idea, right? Is to remind all of us that we actually do need to do self-care. We need to focus on self-care. I was just thinking about that this morning, actually, and speaking with a friend of mine. You know, she said our children tend to be like the center of our life, and everything revolves around them. And I think it's important to sort of find some balance and remember that even though, you know, the people in our lives that have PWS are very important, there's so much that's important in our life, including ourselves and our other family members. So when we take better care of ourselves, everyone ends up benefiting.
All right. So do you have any social media channels?
I did put my social media in the first slide. You can, you know, you can figure out from there how to connect with me. But yeah, I can connect with me on Facebook, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, you can connect with me on Instagram. You know, I don't post often to all of those places, but I would love to keep in touch with whoever might be interested in staying in touch.
Thank you. Somebody commented, just said, I love the idea of scheduling a worry meeting.
Yes, let me talk about that for just another minute since we have a couple of minutes here. Worry time is so great. I actually learned that strategy from a therapist years back. And, you know, we go around our day worrying about this, worrying about that. And it really keeps us from being in the present moment. In the present moment, we actually don't really have any worry. We're always, you know, thinking about the future if we're worrying about something. So if you say, okay, you know, I'm going to give myself time to worry, I'm going to be intentional about it. You know, it's like honoring that part of ourselves that wants to protect ourselves and wants to worry. So it's like saying, okay, Emily, you know, I'm gonna schedule you for, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 30 minutes or whatever you want to say. And you give yourself that time. It allows you to postpone worrying. And sometimes it's interesting because you may be harder to actually worry on purpose than you think, right? So it's a very good strategy. Another very similar strategy that people use sometimes is, you know, they say, oh, I'm worrying all the time, I can't stop, is to have a glass jar of marbles. And the idea is, you know, you have a certain color marbles for your worries, and you have other color marbles for things that are really good in your life. Like maybe you have, you know, white marbles for great things in your life and yellow marbles for worries. And you just kind of add them to the jar. And then when you look at the jar, you get a sense of, you know, how much do you really worry compared to good things that are happening? So it gives you kind of a visual picture of, you know, if I start feeling like, oh, my life's so bad, you know, I look at the marble jar and I realize, oh no, actually there's a lot of different colors in there.
A mom asked, how do you not feel guilty, like you're neglecting your other responsibilities?
You know, I do feel guilty, and I have felt guilty. There's been many, many times I felt guilty. But guilt does not, it's not a very high energy level, right? So if we go around feeling guilty, it actually drains us and it keeps us from doing many of the things that we need to do. And I know this from experience because I've studied it for a long time as well. But the times when I've gotten a lot done and I've been really productive and I've really done a lot, you know, and I've wowed myself, let's say, have been times when I was feeling really good. It hasn't come out of guilt. Those things haven't stemmed from guilt. They've stemmed from having balance and being healthy and being able to stop during the day and say, hey, I need 5 minutes for me because, you know, I need to breathe, or I just need to slow down. I think for all of us, it can be really helpful to remember that aside from all of our duties and all the things on our plate, we have a life to live. And we have, you know, travel we may want to do. We have things we may want to learn. We have hobbies we may want to indulge in. Like all of that is a part of life. And we have to let it in sometimes, you know, or we're just not living fully. Like we need to make space and balance for those things because actually today is our only day. I mean, this is really it. This is what we've got right now. So I've experimented with this a lot, and the guilt thing, I know it's a real thing. I know it's hard and it's really there. But one thing I would recommend is try and like notice in your interactions with other people, when you see someone else who's managing to not feel guilty, like cheer them on for it, you know, celebrate them, give yourself that same opportunity. And, you know, if we like let ourselves sort of like let go of the guilt, then other people feel like they have that ability too.
Okay. Another question is for worry time. Do you have a notebook you jot down your notes for the time that you schedule for your worry meeting?
I have done that before and it's worked great for me. One time recently, I found that I was feeling really overwhelmed and I was worrying a lot. And so I did. I took a notebook and I wrote down every single thing that I was scared of and worried about and felt bad about. And it felt really, really great to get it all out. Yeah, and I felt a lot better. So I kind of am a writer, so I tend to do a lot of journaling, and journaling is really, really helpful for me. I would say for people who are experimenting with this, like, don't feel scared about your worries or any bad feelings, because these things come and go. You know, one day we're feeling one way, another day we're feeling another way. Often these things just want to be recognized. And that goes back to the part of the model, which is self-compassion. You know, we push things aside because we want to feel like, oh, I'm doing good, I'm fine, I'm on top of all of this. Often when we start really taking care of ourselves, one of the first things that happens is we realize like that we may not be doing that well, but we've got to have compassion. I mean, you know, the type of work that we do and the type of situations that we face can be tough. They are hard. It's like a hard part of life. So it's like, we've got to give ourselves that compassion of like, wow, even if I'm doing a crappy job, I'm doing an amazing job in a way. So this is just something to keep in mind, that like self-compassion is really a really, really important piece of the puzzle. And I've experimented with this a lot. I took several years ago, I spent an entire year every day writing down my self-care. And I found that despite thinking that I was quite doing a lot of self-care, I found that most days I didn't do anything. I was appalled really by how I did not, take very good care of myself. So it helped me double down and recommit to knowing that, whatever we're going through, we're enough, we're okay. And we're worthy, we're worthy of things going well, and we're worthy of this journey, and we're worthy of the challenge as well.
Thank you. That is very true. We as moms oftentimes don't take care of ourselves. Everybody else is taken care of first before us. So that is a very good point. Another mom asked, do you have any tips for dealing with times when you do have to multitask? Such as dinner time when the children are asking you 1,000,001 questions.
This seems to happen every day, and it does seem to happen around dinner time, and questions too. We seem to be on a question frenzy in my household right now. I mean, I think again, like self-compassion, it's okay too to get like really frazzled and just be like, okay, like let me be, I've just got to get dinner on the table, so I think like stopping, also making people say, don't ask me anything until I've got this finished, or, you can see that I'm doing something right now. Can you give me 10 seconds and then I'll answer your question? I do a lot of that in my household, and sometimes people complain about it. I get pushback, like, oh, come on, give me a break. Well, it's like, no, I'm sorry. My brain, works this way, and it just can't handle everything all at once. So I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for all that we do. With multitasking, I would just say there are times when we have to multitask. That's part of life. A problem arises when we're doing it all the time, because then it's really like constant. So if we multitask a certain portion of every day, we could just balance it out by trying to have at least one little tiny part of the day, maybe it's small, in which we don't have to multitask, and we can just do like one thing and finish it all the way through.
Thank you. I will definitely practice the 2-minute storms with gratitude and topic of benefit. Thank you. Brilliant idea.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm glad that this is helpful for someone. It's not actually my idea. It's an intervention that comes from the research. It's been shown to be really, really helpful, but I have used it in my life many times. And I found that, if I have one of those days where I'm not feeling very good and I wish I was in a better mood, often just doing one of these gratitude storms can shift everything around for me. I can feel much better.
Somebody is asking, excuse me, can we access the lecture and the slides after the lecture? So you had said you would put them out for us to post?
I already sent a PDF of all of the slides. So okay. Yeah.
All right. So for the participants, the slides will be on the hub. And then in about a week, the video recording with the slides will be also available on the website. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm looking to see if there's any other questions in our area. People will gain an extra 4 minutes of time, I guess.
That would be nice, a nice thing, I think, because I was thinking these type of conferences, you know, you're running from one thing to the next. And like, if I can also reiterate, like, let's just slow down. Let's go slow. You know, life is fast. It's like a luxury to go slow these days. So it's like something you actually have to intentionally do.
All right, so if people would also please complete their surveys, this is really going to help us at PWSA USA determine kind of what's the course for the next conventions, topics, and such. So we ask that if you could please take a minute to complete that. We've just given you an extra 3, so there should be no reason. So, all right, everybody. Thank you, Emily, for such a wonderful presentation on a much needed topic.
Thank you so much. It's really, really an honor to share this. I mean, it's close to my heart. And I just wanted to say, if anyone, you know, wants to connect or reach out, please don't hesitate to email me. I really enjoy supporting people in this way and also being supported. So don't hesitate.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thanks.